Thanks, guys.
All right, let's bring in Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick of the state of Texas to talk about some of the latest going on across this nation. Lieutenant Governor, great to see you this morning. Good morning and welcome to Fox and Friends.
Good to be with you. I hope that here's a number I can give all of you that will be repeated over and over and over again as a headline. And that is, we are facing a situation on the border. By the end of the first term of Joe Biden, nearly 20% of all Americans will be here illegally.
Wow.
Now, where do I get that number? First of all, these are numbers we've created here in Texas, but MIT did a study before Biden became president that we had about 30 million people here illegally in Texas because we've been apprehending about 400,000 a year for the last 20 years. We get 1 out of 3. That means over 20 years, that's 24 million people at a minimum. In this first term of Biden, last year, we apprehended over 2 million. If we get 1 out of 3, that's 6 that came in. We're projecting 2.5 million this year. That means 7.5 million will come in if we apprehend 1 out of 3. That means in Joe Biden's first term, in his first term, we will have more people come into America illegally than we have in the entire state of Texas. There are 29 million people in Texas. Joe Biden is going to let in about 30 million people in his first term, based on who we apprehend, 1 out of 3. You add the 30 million in 4 years to the other 30 million, that's 60 million people here illegally in the United States. That's 20% of the population. The Democrats and the left want to take over the country, and you can take over the country when you allow, in a 4-year period under Joe Biden, 30 million people in here, more people than live in Texas, in 4 years, because the next thing they'll want to give them a green card because they can't work without a Social Security number. The next thing they'll want to give them citizenship and, of course, the right to vote. And then you've lost your country. Wake up, America.
Well, wow, because we just had Mark Levin going over the why. He said something similar to what you're saying.
Yes.
You're talking about political ramifications. He was, too. He also talked about the cultural ramifications.
Absolutely.
I want to talk to you about this decision by the governor of Texas to have buses and say, look, if the federal government won't do this, we're going to put people on buses here in Texas, and we're going to take the border issues back to D.C. We're going to drop them off on the steps of the Capitol. I'll be honest with you, Lieutenant Governor, when I first heard that, I said, this is a gimmick. And then Will said, yeah, well, sometimes gimmicks bring attention to problems. So what say you?
Well, I don't think it's a gimmick. I think you're seeing the first step of a constitutional showdown between the governor and the legislature and the state of Texas and the federal government. Because Jen Psaki, how dare her say in her press conference the other day, well, this is a publicity stunt. We're the ones in charge of enforcement. You have no power. Let me tell you what our authority and power is. We have an oath to defend the Constitution of Texas and the United States of America and to protect the lives and welfare of our citizens. And when the federal government comes in and interferes with our ability to keep our oath, then it's time that we have a showdown. I also agree with Ken Paxton's comments that with a new Supreme Court, maybe they'll revisit the Supreme Court decision on the Arizona law where there was a 5-3 vote that states can't set their own policy for immigration. What happens when you have a federal government that does not enforce the law? Our founders never envisioned, when they said the federal government protected our borders, they never envisioned a president who would allow our country to be invaded. So Texas has to stand up, as does Arizona, as does New Mexico, as does California, as does every state in this country, because, again, otherwise you lose your country to the left. 20% of America, by the end of the Biden term, will be here illegally with the past and the present. We cannot allow our country to be taken over by people who don't share our values, don't share our principles, don't know our history, and really aren't loyal to our flag. They're just coming here for the goodies that Biden is giving out. I understand people wanting to make their lives better. We cannot take in the whole world here. And if the federal government won't enforce the law, then we need to enforce the law. And let's have a constitutional showdown. Let's go back to the Supreme Court and see what the decision is this time, because the federal government is violating their constitutional oath.
It's staggering. Lieutenant Governor, we had Mark Levin on the program earlier, and he sort of rhetorically asked the question, where are these people going? What social services are they using? How are they being absorbed? Talk to us about the community impact on law-abiding, tax-paying citizens, not just in Texas, but across the country, of a flood of that many people.
Yeah. So what happens is they won't answer that question. Ask Jen Psaki, where do these people go when they get here, and what do they do? Because they can't work with any legitimate company because you have to have a Social Security number. That's why before Biden is out of office, you'll see him make a move to give everyone a green card so that they can work, which also will take away jobs from American citizens. And then, again, the citizenship, and then over the years, their right to vote. So there's nothing they can do. I mean, that's the point. And the Biden administration doesn't answer that question, because when they're dropped off in some city somewhere in the middle of the night on some jet or in some bus that no mayor or no county judge knows about, you've reported that in the past. That's really happening. When that happens, where do these people go? Where do they go? Well, they go to our schools, and by the way, that cost us a fortune. We don't have enough bilingual teachers. Number two, most of these kids are 2 and 3 grade levels behind when they come here from around the world. And so they come in, we spend a lot of money, they drop out, and then what do? They join a gang? Do they go to work for money under the table? In other words, they won't answer that question because you've hit on the target. Levin has hit on the target. There is nothing for them to do. And then they're not supposed to give government health care, but they do. By the way, we have to treat them when they come to the emergency room. And they'll go to the emergency room with simple things like a cough or a cold or whatever because they have no other place to go. So they overwhelm our education system. They overwhelm our health care system. And we want people to come here illegally. And it's time for Republicans, Democrats in Washington to have legal immigration reform. But it's also time for Texas to stand up and say, bring it on, federal government. You want to stop us from trying to protect our own citizens? I'm sorry. I mean, if we saw a fight break out on the bridge, a crossing bridge between a bunch of illegal immigrants, and the Border Patrol stood around and did nothing, wouldn't we want to step in and try to stop that fight? Well, if the federal government will do nothing, we've got to step in and do everything we can and let them take us to court.
So,
let them
Lieutenant Governor, I just want to,
it's time for a showdown.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to follow up on and just clarify then.
Yes.
In your answer to the first question and in my conversation with Ken Paxton yesterday, the governor's proposal to ship illegal immigrants to Washington, D.C., which Jen Psaki says you have no authority to enforce anyone onto a bus. The point you're making, which Ken Paxton is making, and which the governor is trying to force, is a new constitutional confrontation. If you won't federal government enforce, we will, and let the Supreme Court find out whether or not that is constitutional. You want to bring that back to a head.
It's time for a showdown. It is time for a showdown. And let's do it in the courts. And that's where we're heading. And by the way, I wish someone would ask Psaki on Monday, by the way, why don't you just welcome them to Washington, D.C.? If it's good enough that they can go to any city in the country, what's wrong, Jen? Why don't you just welcome them? Why don't you welcome them to Delaware?
Yeah.
Why not? What's the problem? Don't you like illegal immigrants, Jen? Doesn't the president want them in his home state? So what's the problem? Because they're being shipped all over this country in the middle of the night. You know, I get calls from, I had a mayor, you've had the mayor of Uvalde on several times. He called me a few weeks ago about 7 o'clock in the morning, said Border Patrol just called me and said they're bringing hundreds to my town. I don't have the police force to handle it. We don't have the system to handle it. We're a small town. So we send troopers there in a hurry to try to block them from coming. But this happens all the time. And again, the headline should be, by the end of the Biden administration, more people will come here to Texas in 4 years, will come to America in 4 years than live in the state of Texas. We have about 29 million people. Yeah. And we're going to, if we apprehend 2.5 million a year, that means 7.5 million are coming in. If we catch 1 out of 3, that's more people than live in Texas will come in his first term. You add that to the other 30 million who are already here, that's 20% of the American population here illegally. What do you think that does to undermine and destroy the very foundation, that the principles and values that this Constitution was written upon by the Word of God and this country was built upon? It destroys us.
It's a eye-opening number. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, sir.